I think everyone knows me, but I'm Wade Culp, and I'm the president-elect for our club. Our president, Ramona Farrell, is out of town tonight, so I'm standing in for her. But this is going to be an exciting event. I have to start out by saying how wonderful it is to be at a social with all of you indoors and no one has masks on. So that itself is worthy of celebration. A number of people deserve our thanks for making this event happen tonight. Certainly, I'll start with recognizing George Fletcher, who helped secure our speaker that I think is going to be enormously entertaining. Caroline Stewart has been laboring to pull this together logistically for the committee that has been in charge of the social, so thanks to Caroline for doing that.
Thank you.
And we're not going to have a normal meeting tonight, but we are going to take an occasion to introduce a couple of new members. That's really our only business thing tonight, but because they're with us, I think they deserve some recognition this evening. But I do want to mention that I think our club is just in a wonderful place this coming spring. We have some exciting things going on beyond this meeting. Our next 3 meetings, we will have with us Dr. Brandon Traxler, who led our state's response to the COVID pandemic. You probably saw her on TV and on radio, heard her on radio many times. She is a wonderful person, a personal friend of mine, and a resident of Greenville. She'll be speaking to us at our next regular meeting, which is on the 22nd. Then we have Career Day, and we'll be having our Lieutenant Governor, Pam Levette, speak to us at the end of April. And then we have our upcoming Peace and Conflict Resolution Conference. So this is a wonderful time to be a Rotarian in this club. And the only thing that can make it better, I think, is to bring more people that you enjoy spending time with into our club. And so that's why we're going to introduce these new members tonight. One other note, I think you know that we asked those who came tonight to bring canned goods for our canned food drive for Alexander Elementary. If you weren't able to do that tonight, still drop off any canned food at Scott Powell's office between now and March 15th. Is that right? Anything else, Scott?
I'll take money too.
Okay. Always takes money too. I take money too.
And good for 19 Washington Park. There's a big need, but we're going from providing 24 boxes of food to 36 boxes of food for these families. And so, and then we also need some people on March 15th to help divide the food and put all the boxes.
So is Cindy Fowler here tonight? No, we were expecting Cindy. Could you come on up here so everybody can see you as I introduce you? So one of our 2, we might even have 3 new members here tonight. One of them had showed us a little while ago. You got all 3? 2. Okay. So Cindy Fowler is one of our newest members. She is executive director at the Aspens Day. And listen to this, she is triple licensed. She is licensed as a nursing home administrator, an assisted living administrator, and a South Carolina real estate property manager. So she is very well equipped to help you. She is married to Heather Lees. They have 2 boys and 2 girls. Her passion is working with the senior population. In fact, she has been doing that for 25 years now. And when asked why she wanted to join Rotary, she mentioned networking opportunities, but also the community involvement opportunities and giving back and serving in the community. Her sponsors are Kiara Johnson, and she was born and raised in Greer, South Carolina. So anything else, Cindy? Is that a good summary? No, that's a great start. We're excited to have you with us, and thank you for joining our club. We look forward to doing this. Colleen Simmons. Colleen is a sales account manager at Fairland Office Solutions. She has a fiance, 3 adult sons, and 2 fur babies, chocolate lab, and a St. Bernard husky. Her passion is interior design and decorating. And when asked why she wanted to join Rotary, she mentioned having the opportunity to get more involved in Greenville and to meet fellow Rotarians and others in our community. Scott Stevens is her sponsor. She has lived in Greenville for 3.5 years and moved most recently from Morgantown, West Virginia, where she was for 25 years. So, Colleen, we're so excited you're with us today. That concludes our business for this evening, and I would like to invite George Fletcher up to introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Wade. Bob Dotson moved to Greenville in 2017, and I've been working continuously since then to try and get him on a Rotary program. So thank you all for coming tonight. By now, most of you have heard one of Bob Dotson's 1,200 stories that he did for the NBC Today Show. He is truly one of the great storytellers on earth. Bob joined NBC News as a correspondent in 1975. His work has earned him some 120 international awards, including 10 Emmy Awards, a Senate Grand Prize for documentary, a record 6 Edward R. Murrow Awards for Best Network Broadcasting and Writing, and an induction into several Broadcasting Halls of Fame. Last fall, Bob won his 10th Emmy for writing and narrating The Real Bedford Falls. It was a tribute to the 75th anniversary of It's a Wonderful Life and the place that Frank Capra supposedly conceived Bedford Falls. In 2009, Bob came to Greenville to speak at my induction as district governor. He is a polio survivor and therefore very appreciative of all Rotary has done for eradicating polio and for the other actions worldwide of the Rotary Foundation. He came again in 2010 to film the piece that you all are about to watch. And he retired here in 2017, if teaching storytelling at Syracuse University, international speaking engagements, and continuing to earn Emmys, is in fact retiring. And finally, Bob graduated from the University of Kansas, and there were 3 of us in this room who were fraternity brothers 58 years ago. The third is Jim Gossett, sitting right next to me. All of us live within 2 miles of each other in Greenville. Both Jim and Bob were from the St. Louis area, and I was from the Kansas City area. And there would finally be more University of Kansas people in the room than Kansas State people if Pam and Terry Weaver were here. By the way, Bob's got his book over here. All the proceeds from the book go to maintaining his website, www.myamericanstories.com, which is all 1,200 of his stories online. So with that, could we start the 2010 story?
An 18-year-old from Goose Creek, South Carolina, had a dream that seemed impossibly out of his grasp. But when the Boston Pops came to his home state Tuesday night, it actually came true. NBC's Bob Dotson has that story.
Braden Kirchner likes to conduct music with his eyes closed so he can see his dream. He wants to join John Williams and Arthur Fiedler and Keith Lockhart, the select few who have conducted the Boston Pops.
What do you and Keith Lockhart have in common?
Both young and handsome.
And he's more confident than I am.
Never mind that Braden is just 18. To prepare for a career in conducting, he's learning to play every instrument in the orchestra. 12 so far.
If I gave you orders and I didn't play your instrument, you wouldn't take that order as seriously. No, 1, 2, 3, 1.
Okay.
The friends Braden tutors in Goose Creek, South Carolina know he's serious.
Good, but when you do it, don't go. Just go.
While they hung out last summer, doing what teenagers do, he worked 11 jobs.
I have it planned out. See,
He told his mom, Diane, he needed $10,000 fast.
It was a little shock to me because at that time I just lost my job.
The boy with a dream had seen an ad on the internet saying fans could conduct the Boston Pops if they donated big bucks to the orchestra.
It's just money. And if that can buy you the thing that you wanted all your life, then it's worth it to me.
Braden could have had a fundraiser to get the cash. He did not. Instead, he mowed most of the yards in the neighborhood, worked the overnight shift at the Waffle House, delivered newspapers and pizzas. 6 months later, he had $5,000, half the money he needed.
There were a lot of people talking behind the scenes that when the time came, we would make sure he got there.
Please welcome in his Boston Pops conducting debut, Braden Kirshner.
Turns out that $5,000 was enough. Last night, the Pops performed in South Carolina, just down the road from Goose Creek, with a new guest conductor. Standing on that stage, Braden tallied up what his dream had cost.
All the hundreds of yards I mowed and the hundreds of cars I washed and all the late night jobs.
Is the bill a bargain?
I could buy a new car, but it would rust and break down in 20 years. And then this is something that I'll always have with me.
Oh, he'll have something more than a memory. The Pops return Braden's money to help him pay for college. Some things aren't bought. They're earned.
My heart jumped out of my chest. It was the coolest thing I've ever experienced.
For today, Bob Dotson, NBC News, Goose Creek, South Carolina.
I wish I could do it again.
What a great story, Bob. Thank you.
Howdy, neighbors. Let's do this in here.
Yeah.
Jordan, his friends, since the earth was cool. You know, Braden conducted that right at the Peace Center. That night could have made him star. Instead, stepped out of the spotlight. His friends were floored, but we all want to live our dreams. But Braden told me he didn't really want to be famous. He wanted to achieve a goal. Okay. And some of us we call that feedback. You probably. How's this? Better? Okay.
Better.
Well, he could have been a star, but his friends were floored. He stepped out of the spotlight to learn how to drive a bus. After college, he took a job as the band director at Stall High School in Charleston. And the first 5 weeks, he studied to get his commercial driver's license so he could drive a school bus around the poor neighborhoods and pick up kids who couldn't otherwise get to band practice. Some of them were considering dropping out. Failure was forgiven in Braden's band. Giving up was not. One of the kids said, he took the word can't out of our vocabulary. He taught them how to craft a note within their lives. My grandfather had a classroom too. He lived in a little town in Kansas with a beautiful name of Hiawatha. When I was 8 years old, he gave me a bit of wisdom. The shortest distance between two people is a good story. Once I know your story, I begin to see not just how we differ, but what we have in common. We would step out on that porch after dinner, and my grandfather would spin surprising stories. One night he said, "Ever take out a honey?" But even at 8, I was Your grandma and I went to Salt Lake City. Even today, I wondered, why? Probably had some free tickets on the railroad train. Grandma and I were nuzzling over dinner in the dining car, and the conductor walked up and he said, "Is your name?" "Oh, baby." "Yeah." And Grandpa said, "Yeah." He said, "You grew up in a small town? How many brothers and sisters do you have?" Grandpa said, 10. Doctor looked at him and said, "I'm your oldest brother." Vance Bailey had gone west to look for work, ended up in Minnesota trying to get a job on the Great Northern Railroad. Realized that most of the people who were working there had Norwegian or Swedish surnames. So he changed his name from Bailey to Baileyson to better his chances. And when his mom and dad wrote a letter to the last known town that he lived in, the postmaster didn't know any Baileys, so they returned it. Grandpa pulled out a postcard and showed me that evening. It was taken on the honeymoon. Grandpa floating on their backs in Great Salt Lake with a brother, who had obviously taken a couple of days off from the railroad. In a big red circle around the brother, the postcard was addressed to the mom from the honeymoon. And it was probably the first tweet. All it said was, "Ma, we found Vance." More later. People ask me all the time why I became a storyteller. I've spent my entire life trying to tell a tale as well as my grandpa. Telling tales on television is a lot like writing on smoke. Once the story is said, it drifts away. But I found that the stories that reveal our better natures seem to linger. And so, I wandered around the world for 40 years looking for names we don't know, which should. There are 8 teenage girls who are the only medical team in an area the size of Maryland. 640 people live out there, but the youngest among them has set a standard for community service that are untouched anywhere in the country. And in Alaska, doesn't have emergency medical service. Until a boy walked home from basketball practice one winter night and was struck by a car. The driver drove off, leaving him with a broken leg and a crushed arm. It was 45 minutes before they found him and rescued him. The next day, his dad, a former Army medic, decided to teach some medical classes. The adults dropped out. They had jobs. So it fell to those 8 teenage girls to start saving lives. Now, obviously, their high school principal was not happy that they would be cutting class to go on emergency calls. But one day, over, heart attack. Guess who saved him? After that, the principal told me it was like that old movie, Ghostbusters. Who are you gonna come home? Within 3 years, those teenage girls were chosen as the outstanding ambulance unit in all of Alaska, which is kind of ironic because they don't have an ambulance. There's only 3 miles of road in an area the size of Maryland. When they get an emergency call, they hop on a snowmobile, or they jump into a boat, or maybe grab a ride on a float plane and go out and save lives. They saved hundreds of lives, including their own. April Kameroff was depressed that night, and she got about 2 handfuls of Tylenol. Her friends found her, pumped out her stomach. Not only saved her life, they turned her around. April went off to college, one of the first to do so, and she graduated. The day I showed up at Antioch, April had come home. She's the first nurse
that town ever had. You know, the complete story of this country is not what you see on the news. It is people with a common dream who band together to overcome great odds. There's a couple out in Fort Collins. She's a nurse. He's a mechanic.
You thought it'd be nice
They have a little girl.
Jim and Marty Dwyer figured that after 5
Boys, that just probably won't happen. So they decided to take in
a little girl who was escaping from war.
She showed up with her sister. And 3 weeks later, 3 other brothers and sisters came knocking on the Dwyer's door. They took them all in. And the night they invited me for dinner, there were 12 of them sitting around the table. Soon-Young Tran, the 11-year-old who first came to the door, had an amazing story to tell. She said, after the fall of Vietnam, the whole family tried to escape. But they were unable to do so. So mom and dad took the kids 2 at a time down to the shore and put them in the tiny boats and said, if you make it to America, just do the best you can. Marty Dwyer looked up from the table and said, I don't know if I could look twice enough. Do that to them and give them a better life. And I said, well, mom and dad just had high hopes. Dr. Sonia Tran graduated #2 in her class at Johns Hopkins University Medical School. And today she is an outstanding research scientist. All of the Tran kids went to college and they all graduated. All the Dwyer boys went to college and they graduated. They spent the next dozen years raising money to bring the mom and dad from Vietnam, Colorado. Last time I saw them was Christmas Eve. They were all together. The American parents, the Vietnamese parents, and all the kids. The Vietnamese parents lived 4 houses away, sharing the same street with the American couple who shared their love. You know, there are dark shadows on earth. Not too far where I used to live from New York City. There's an example of how we might possibly live together peacefully. If you take the B68 down Coney Island Avenue, you pass a Dunkin' Donuts that's owned by a first-generation Hasidic Jew rabbi. It's managed by a Muslim from the Middle East. And most of the folks who come in for coffee in the morning are also first-generation immigrants from Ukraine and Russia. Back home, they're at each other's throats. In Brooklyn, they're on each other's soccer teams. Why do you suppose that's so? Well, after 4 million miles in this country, looking at all sorts of people like me, what happened to many of our ancestors who came here, risking everything to try to find a better life. Those folks in Brooklyn faced each morning with a pioneer spirit, a willingness to explore new places and opportunities. It's part of our geography. Well, the keys to history's treasures are often found in such unexpected places. You know, the first truly democratic vote in the Northern little spot on the banks of the Columbia River where it dumps into the Pacific Ocean. That's where Lewis and Clark and their expedition stopped. They finally got to see the ocean. Well, they were hungry. They asked the local Native Americans, we can't find any animals to shoot and eat. What have you got? And they said, well, we've already given our leftovers away. Where did we eat? They said, well, on the other side of the river. Well, they were on the Washington State side, and the other side of the river is now Oregon. It also happens to be one of the most treacherous stretches of water on the Pacific Ocean. In fact, the Coast Guard Academy sends people out there to see if they can survive. And remember, these folks were in canoes. They tried for 6 weeks to get from one side to the other, almost died many times. So finally, Lewis and Clark decided they'd hold the boat to see if anybody wanted to continue, because everyone's life was at stake. They even let Clark's slave York raise his hand and say, let's try again. And that young woman sitting by the campfire with a baby, who had guided them to that spot, started leaving down the road. That discovery, a nature photographer named Rex Z, led directly to our newest park, the Lewis and Clark National Park. And yet he didn't go to the opening ceremony, even though he had spent a dozen years documenting his findings, testifying for and trying to gain support. And I asked him why. He said, oh, that's the way I planned it. He said, stop and think about it. No big project ever gets done without power and money. George knows that. And he said, I had neither power nor money. So I decided to approach this problem just like I taught my daughter Jennifer how to ride a bike. When I finally got the training wheels on, power and money, the problem, I didn't run alongside her, walk across the church parking lot and scream to the neighbor, hey, look what Dad did, not Jay, how to ride a bike. Instead, he stepped back into the shadows and applauded power and money as if they're the real reason that happened. He said, there's no limit what you can get done. They don't care who gets credit. Isn't that an amazing blueprint on how to get them? No. I felt it was my job to search behind the mirror. It usually just reflects celebrity and power. And I found something I thought was fascinating. Seemingly ordinary people standing in the shadow who were confronting problems and slowly crafting solutions to problems we all face. Well, one of them is just down the road. Her name is Cecilia Benitez. She had 6 jobs, but she still found time each evening to come to the Hilton Free Medical Clinic and clean the entire place. Well, her family too. Day after day, year after year, they took no pay. Why? She said, well, it seemed like my second home, filled with friends. The reason for that was a guy named Jack McConnell. McConnell was a retired doctor, and he was working in the clinic. He told his friends, when someone walks through the door, they're not patients. They're not a disease. They're our neighbors. That's why Cecilia and a legion of working poor showed up day after day here at the clinic. 6,000 working poor on Hilton Head Island. Real reports, documents. So, Jack McConnell came out of retirement and decided to treat them for free. He asked some of his friends to do the same thing, and they were reluctant at first because they said, first of all, we don't have any license to practice here in South Carolina. And secondly, we might get sued, and then lose our entire life savings. For the pandemic, 250,000 doctors in this country and 2 million nurses no longer cared for the sick, even though many of them were young enough to do so. Commonwealth goes to the state legislature, he gets to waive the license fee, and then he finds some inexpensive insurance for the doctors. All across the country, people were inspired by that, what he did, and what Cecilia did. And they started opening up free clinics. Today, there are 1,400 nationwide. I was able to do that. In his case, it wasn't his grandpa, it was his mom. He said, every night at dinner when I was a kid, my mom would say, who did you help today? If no one asked today. But if you did, you were the hero of the evening. Jack McConnell did not play as much golf as he liked in retirement. Died at age 93 with the idea that he had become the person he wanted to be. Cecilia Benitez did too. She said, it's not where you come from or where you're going. It's who you help along the way that makes a difference in this world. Rich and poor, educated or not. Same message. An out-of-work truck driver helped a struggling critical student and changed her. I bumped into the truck driver outside of Florence, Mississippi. He was detailing his new car. And I stopped with him. His work ticket said, you know, that Ford and I are the same age and it's in better condition. He said, you know, you can't tell about a car from its polish. Same with people. When James Cruddock, in his trucking business, fell on hard times, he took a job cleaning medical tools in Detroit. He noticed something. The students were working with scalpels that were too big. At the time, surgery students practiced on rats. So Jim borrowed their medical books, read them all, and then went into his garage and created some of the world's first microsurgery tools. One of them he gave to a struggling student named Sherman Silver. That kid was frustrated. He said, I'm not really good with my hands. I don't even know why I'm in surgery. Jim took him aside. I think surgery is more about your mind than your hands. Start thinking of the people you're working on, or in this case, rats, just like they're an old car. You know, the human body has valves and tubes just like a car. And it will make you focus, and you'll be easier at doing that. He never became a doctor himself. I asked him why. He said, well, when I moved here, I had 4 girls. I was in my late 40s. And eventually I had all those students to teach. If you graduate this spring from the University of Michigan Med Center as an outstanding surgical student, you get your name on a plaque with Jim Cruddock's face. A truck driver who only graduated high school. And the people say it's their highest award, given an honor for their best teacher. Back home in Mississippi, his neighbors think of Jim as just that old guy and fixing. Seldom talks about what he did. He did. Speaks for itself. You know, I've been thinking a lot about this speech because I realized that all of us are in the situation to do so much for people and to help people. I'll give you a little example. On my webpage, which I post every day, I got a note from a guy out in California, and he said, you want to know how I changed the world? And I said, sure. And he said, well, I went to get my polio vaccine in 1959. And my dad and uncle waved me away and said, listen, hope it doesn't hurt. And he says, I was 13 years old, so I was flipping. And I said, when I came back in, I said, well, it didn't hurt. And Dad said, what do you mean? And so I said, they don't get shots anymore. They just put a little spoon, put some sugar on it and drop a little serum. And he said, Dad turned to my uncle and he went, a spoonful of sugar, his dad and his uncle were the two guys who wrote the soundtrack from Mary Poppins. He says, so here I was, a 13-year-old, just not living up to his dad, and I changed it. He said, well, stop, think about it. What is it about Victorian England, which we were talking about having a spoonful of sugar, because the messenger, it was on everybody's mind in the late 50s. You all understand that because of Rotary's association with polio. And he says, in my case, it happened. Well, the two most important days of your life, I believe, are the day you were born, the day you find out why. Ever since that evening on my grandfather's front porch, I thought I felt the need to crisscross the country, searching for names we don't know, but should. Turns out one of them used to tuck me into bed. I thought my father was like everybody else. Educated, successful, not vision, not at the store. I assumed he had gone to college. But when I graduated from the University of Kansas, 3 years after George, my dad said, I didn't go to college. I dropped out in the 5th grade. I had to. My dad went off to war and didn't come home. And my mom had a younger brother and a younger sister to care for. So she sent me out to a farm outside of St. Louis with the idea that the farmer would give me room and board, and any money I would make for working with him would be sent back to mom, care for the kids. So about 6 months later, my aunt shows up with her husband, who was a beat cop in St. Louis. And this is how long ago it was. They were in a wagon with a horse. And they were looking with the farmer. My dad told them. Turns out the farmer had been steaming open the letters that the mom and the aunt would send once in a while, put a dollar inside. Took the dollar out, and then gave Dad the letter. So they took him home to St. Louis, and he got a job as a janitor in a wooden auto factory. And his job as an 11-year-old was to go into the assembly line and to sweep up the wood shavings. At morning at graduation, my dad said it was the loneliest year of my life. The adults in the line were first-generation Germans and Italians. So not only were they adults, but they didn't speak a language I knew. My dad's step-up job was as a janitor in an optical store. The man who owned the store said, Bill, we're going to ask you to work nights. So you might want to consider going to night school. I asked him how many years he went to night school. He said, 23 years. I went from janitor to general manager of 2 stores. When you were born, my second son, I decided it was time to have my own business. And I noticed that there was a grinding stone for sale in Kansas City. Back in those days, opticians ground their own lenses. My dad had $140 in savings in 1946. So he got on the train, bought the stone, didn't have enough money for a hotel, spent the night in Union Station in Kansas City, came home, and started Dotson Optical with a partner. That Christmas, the partner took the profits and went to Mexico. 2 months later, his second son, me, came down with polio. I asked my dad, what did you do? And he said, well, I struggled and saved and started another company, and I got enough money to send you to college. Now you're graduating the first Dotson ever to complete college. We can learn a lot from people like my dad, standing in the shadow. Wisdom doesn't always wear a suit. Thank you all very much. This was my first job after I graduated. I went to the CBS radio station in North St. Louis. I said, I'm ready. And they sent me out to the St. Louis Zoo with Marlon Perkins to do the elephant show. Alice, Mooney, Trudy, Clara, and Marie. So my grandmother was not plus. You know, here I went to college and I'm doing the elephant show. And she really didn't care when I got an upgrade to the chimpanzee act. When she finally could see what I did on television, I called her and I said, well, Grandma, what do you think? Never long pause. And she said, Bobby, I think you ought to learn a trade. They're not going to keep Dave for 2 minutes work a day, he will starve to death. It became our running joke. She lived in 95. They called her every 2 weeks and I said, Grandma, I got another paycheck. Oh, again. So she would be thrilled that you all came here tonight and we had this time today. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. This facility, I want to thank, I don't see Joel Jones, is he still here? I want to thank Joel, the incoming executive director for REWA. They had just redone this building. It's a 1939 WPA building that was here forever, and they obviously made it big enough now such that they can seat the entire REWA staff in here. But it's available to the public should any of you have needs for a public building. With that, enjoy your social. Thanks so much for coming. And Bob, thanks for your inspiring talk.
If you have any questions on the way,
The bar is open until 7, and please meet Bob.
Thank you.
Great job, guys. Sorry that.
No, you're
I don't know.
good.